NAWBO has basically 3 national events that they do every year. This year is the 50th, so those 3 things are combined into one session this summer in DC. But usually they're spread out through the year. Someone coined that phrase, like we should lift up, show up, speak up, and it stuck with me. I wasn't president at that time, and honestly, I wasn't considering president at that time, but it was something that stuck with me because it's what I do. Every NAWBO event, once my business could afford that, I try to have a table, and I try to invite diverse women to that table to build those relationships. When the time came for me to be president, I wanted there to be something that I always said that represented that, and so the lift up, show up, speak up is what I do. One of the workshops I do for women is called Village and Purpose Building. Identifying that purpose, because most women who are entrepreneurs, unless you've inherited something, their business is their passion.
I'm almost wondering, did you have it all planned? Because it's almost strategic, like
some yes and some no. I think, as I said, whatever organization you join, certainly if you're a woman business owner, I'd love for you to join NAWBO.
Right.
But whatever organization you join, you have to be in it. You have to show up for it.
Yeah.
But it has to fit where you are.
Right.
So don't join an organization with a bunch of people that don't do what you do and then think it's somehow going to benefit you, right? Or if you're an introvert, find somebody to go with so that you don't miss the opportunities. When I had the opportunity then to become a part of the board, I had to jump in. Like, what do you need for me to do? So I started by chairing the DEI, the committee, that I could bring that resource to the board. These are the skills I can bring. It fits the mission that I have as a person, but also my skills. I want to leave with a bang.
Hi, and welcome to another show of the Own Your Brand with Victoria Odekomaya. I am really excited about today's episode because I have my mentor on the show today, and she's been a lot of things to me since I have met her. She is a wonderful entrepreneur, and I cannot wait to dive into her story. She is the president and CEO of Whatever It Takes Consulting, which we have to talk about that name.
Yes, we do.
She's also the current president of NAWBO Indianapolis. And through that and our relationship, she's opened up a lot of opportunities for me, as well as a lot of other female entrepreneurs here locally and even nationally too. So we're going to be diving into what those opportunities are for you as a female entrepreneur. But then we're also going to end with some of the incredible things that she's doing in the final leg of our presidency and what's next. So stay tuned. Welcome.
Thank you very much. That was too kind of you.
Oh, thank you so much. You've been a blessing to me since day one. So this conversation is one that I really look forward to, not just for me, but because of all the things that I know you're going to really impact into everyone listening or watching. So to get started, just tell us a little bit about you, Whatever It Takes, and just give us a little, background.
So I am an educator, first and foremost. I spent roughly 25 years in some form of education. I've pretty much done all there is to do in public education, from the classroom to administration, working with charter schools, opening boards and building schools from the ground up, pre-service teaching at the university level.
Oh, wow.
Like, I've done it all. And I think those things prepared me for entrepreneurship, even though it wasn't what my plan was, right? I often refer to myself as a serendipitous business owner because I love people development. I love helping people develop strategies and supporting people in their growth, right? And so I did that in the classroom, right? I did that with teachers. I did that with pre-service teachers and leaders, right? And people started paying me for it, which wasn't really what I intended, right? And my tax attorney said, hey, Jamyce, you got to do something with this.
Right.
And so I created a business, right? But then I wasn't an entrepreneur in the sense of planning or knowing what really to do, right? And a dear friend of mine, who I'm going to name, Trissetta Briggs, she and I are a part of the same village, so we get together for breakfast or lunch regularly, and she does have that business background, and so I reached out to her, and that's how I got involved with NAWBO, right? And so she helped me to find organizations that would help me think like a business owner, right? My business is called Whatever It Takes on Purpose.
Okay.
One of my favorite books as an educator is written written about how schools need to do whatever it takes to help young people succeed in school.
That's good.
And oftentimes we miss the boat. We worry about the people or the building, right? We don't worry about the young people and what their needs are, right? And so that's why I named my company Whatever It Takes, because that's really what my philosophy is. I want to meet you where you are and help you get to where you want to be, right? And whatever that looks like, I want to be able to support you in doing that, right?
That's great.
So that's where that name came from. I really originally thought I would only be working with schools.
Okay.
But my philosophy, because I grew up in an environment where our family philosophy, our parents really emphasized to those whom much is given, much is required.
Right.
And so community service and public service was always a part of what we did. And so that had to be a part of my philosophy as an entrepreneur. So every quarter, I do something in exchange for an organization that could not otherwise afford to pay me, right?
Wow.
And so they may put me on their website or like this, do a podcast. Somehow we find a way to exchange the services I can provide them for the things that I need. And that's how I expanded beyond education, because I had the opportunity to present at a United Way diversity session where there were funders and companies and not-for-profits. And so doing the work that I do in that room opened up opportunities that I never thought I would ever have. So that's sort of where it started. And it's been blessed, right? Because if you look at the statistics, the average business doesn't make it past 5 years.
True, yeah.
And to not be trained in that, to get past that milestone, because I started my business in 2007, and here I am, like, still here.
Yeah.
But it has been that village of people and organizations that have helped me keep Whatever It Takes going.
That's amazing. So I'm going to go in and ask you more questions about that, but I want to just point something out from what you said, because I love to, whenever there's an opportunity to educate in terms of marketing or anything, I like to point it out. So you mentioned that you were doing some kind of exchange. And so for those people out there that are, thinking of, they're trying to figure out a way to grow their businesses.
Yes.
That's a great opportunity. That's a great idea. And, it has really helped you, worked for you, particularly with the pandemic. A lot of people closed business during that period.
Yes.
But you're still standing because you knew about, connection. And I know NAWBO is also a big part of it, so I want to get into that too.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about who your target audience are.
So that was a growing thing.
Okay.
One of the reasons why I really try to support women who are new to entrepreneurship is because I had zero knowledge about how to make this work, right? And when you first start, revenue is so critical.
Yes.
And you worry and worry and worry about revenue as opposed to setting where is your sweet spot, really finding your sweet spot, right? And so you have a tendency to mission drift, and sometimes you commit to things that don't fit.
Right.
And I think I was as guilty of that initially as other business owners were.
I think we're all guilty of that.
But then I think the first time I had a contract where I finished the contract, but it didn't feel good, right? And you have to work a little harder. You have to compromise some things or do some things you really wouldn't do, or do them in a way that you wouldn't do, right? And so it took me a minute, especially since I thought initially I would be working in schools. And then I had the opportunity to work with not-for-profit organizations and with for-profit organizations. And so that gave me the chance to go, okay, stop, right? Stop and think about it, right? What is your sweet spot? And so for me, two things are really important to me. First and foremost is relationships, right? That I actually have relationships with my clients, because you can't do whatever it takes if you don't have the relationship to be able to have conversations, really frank conversations with people, right? And so I had to learn how to ask the right questions. Before I engaged in a contract or before I agreed to provide services, so that I knew that we could build that relationship. So that is really important to me. And then I'm very outcome driven, right? And so I want to make sure we can measure what it is, which means change is going to be happening.
Right.
And so you've got to really be ready for change, which is another thing I had to learn to talk with people about before I engaged in services. Because I do a lot of diversity work. I do a lot of change work. And if your organization isn't really up to that, then it's not going to be a good fit.
Right.
I don't want my work to be used as a box checker. You can't say, well, we had this person in and they've solved all our problems.
Right.
That's not really what change is. That's not really what a good culture is. An organization with a good culture is always looking at new people come in, people leave, the environment around us changes. So you don't get to it's a continuous improvement thing. Right. And so it took me some time to get to that sweet spot of, okay, I know I could seek out really huge, big contracts, but the leadership process to get to change takes more steps than I want to take.
Right.
And the relationship building is less likely than really what I want to have, right? And so I have some clients who I worked with for 3 to 5 years in building their culture, who I don't work with them anymore, but we're still in contact. And as I work with other organizations, I can connect them. Like, I work with this organization, here's how they did it, and have those organizations connect with each other because we've had that relationship, right? And so I really try to stay in that spot and avoid that drift away from what I know is the place where I'm most effective and feel most comfortable.
So how long did it take you to figure that out?
The first year I got, like I said, I had that opportunity to explore lots of different organizations, right? And so in that first year, 18 months, as I was working with different organizations, it helped me to go, oh, okay, no, right? That's not it. And like I said, I was really blessed to have those opportunities, but that also helped me to go, I don't want to work in that way, right? Or I don't want to wait that long, or I don't want to buck those systems. So because I had a lot of experiences, it took me about 18 months.
Okay. And I wanted to emphasize that because I've been hearing a lot within the entrepreneur circle that I'm finding out that we are siloed a lot and we often have the same problems, but because we don't speak to each other, we think that, oh my God, that's the only, I'm the only one suffering from this. So when you said that you were figuring it out it's okay to figure it out as you go.
It is.
It is. Sometimes it might take you a little longer or maybe quicker. So just wanted to plug that in because don't be, distressed or feel like you're a failure because, so I'm telling you, today's going to be great because we're going to be living with a lot of tips and, a lot of really good information. So I know relationship is big for you and you are a great connector. I know this because you have helped me. Every time I go to a NAWBO event, you're always like, are you guys connecting? You're like making sure, you are so great at that.
Oh, thank you.
So maybe I think maybe we can segue into how did you become how did you even become a part of NAWBO? And just tell us a little bit about that journey.
So I think I mentioned Tracetta Briggs.
Yes, you did.
So Tracetta gave me a list of things to look into, to figure out who was I as an entrepreneur, what do I want to do with my business, like everything from how do I decide what to charge? I was really green, right? I had none of that. And so she gave me a list of things to look into.
She's a wonderful friend. I have to
say
that.
She is, and a great mentor. And so I think that helped me because everything that she gave me, I touched in some way. So I went to the different events of different organizations. I went through the Small Business Association SCORE process, right? That where you get a free mentor, right? That helps you look at what is my business plan and what do I charge and what are the parameters, what's reasonable for me to think about in terms of my business development and growth. And so every suggestion that she gave me, I touched that. I also have a husband who I love very much. Love you, honey. We will celebrate 45 years of marriage in May.
Wow.
But he worked in business to business, and so that was also a source for me to go, okay, here's some things to think about, some things to do, right? And so that's how I got connected with NAWBO.
Okay.
So I went to a lot of different events because there are a ton of them out there, right? And that's another thing, you got to budget. Most of them are not free,
That
right?
is true.
So you got to be selective,
Right.
which is where it helps to know people in those organizations so you get a sense for what they do and
Right.
the extent to which they fit you. But for me, NAWBO clicked right away. And so the event that I went to, the speaker talked about how to give your pitch for your business in 30 seconds in a way that I had never thought about before. Because usually when someone asks you, what do? You go through this whole litany of things, right? But her strategy was, don't go through a litany of things. Connect with them through a key question, right? Let them know what you do through a question. So, for example, using that with you, I would say, so have you ever had a time when your employees had conflict and you could not resolve that? That's what I do, right? And so it connects with the people, right? And we practice that at our tables at the event. And while it seems like something really simple, it really changed how I talk with people when I was doing business. And in the room, and you've experienced being in a NAWBO room, people introduced themselves to me, offered opportunities to support me. It was just a great space to be in. And so I looked at my budget for the next time and joined NAWBO, right? That was in 2016, and I haven't looked back.
Wow.
Right? But it's been a continuous support for me in my business. But I say, and you know me, I'm always seeking out to support women.
Yes.
It's only as good as what you put into it. It's like any relationship, right? Yes. So if you're joining NAWBO expecting for the business fairy to suddenly throw millions of dollars in your lap, that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
But if you enter into it looking to build relationships, right, and to grow, there is no better room that you could be in. So that's really how I got involved with NAWBO.
That is amazing. And I know that you have this specific statement about Lift Up. Tell us a little bit about that.
So NAWBO has basically 3 national events that they do every year. This year is the 50th, so those 3 things are combined into one session this summer in DC. But usually they're spread out through the year. So there is a fall Women's Business Conference, there's a Winter Leadership Institute, and then there's the Summer Advocacy, right? And so once I got myself to the place where I could set aside money for all of those things, I got into that sequence, right? And one of those sequences was at the Leadership Institute, someone coined that phrase, like we should lift up, show up, speak up. And it stuck with me. I wasn't president at that time, and honestly, I wasn't considering president at that time, but it was something that stuck with me because it's what I do. Like, so every NAWBO event, once my business could afford that, I try to have a table, and I try to invite diverse women to that table to build those relationships, right? And so that's what I do. And so when the time came for me to be president, I wanted there to be something that I always said that represented that. And so the lift up, show up, speak up is what I do. And I think all of those pieces have to exist, right? And especially as women, there are so many demands on us as women. And even though it's 2024 and we're liberated and working and, right, many of those traditional responsibilities of being female are still present, right? So you're the CEO, but you still are mommy, and, you know, there are all of these other things. And so being a part of an organization that lifts women up as women, as mothers, you know, whatever those things are. And when you talk to NAWBO members, you'll find members who their kids grew up together. Like, there are supports that exist for you as a woman, right, that are really critical. It's like a sisterhood. But like I said, if you don't show up, it doesn't matter, right? NAWBO, both locally and nationally, does amazing programs, and there are chapters of NAWBO around the country. And you often have access to other chapters' activities. But if you don't go out there and do it, like it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so you've got to show up, right? And not only show up, but show up prepared to engage, right? And so if you're at my table, I say to you, you better go to that directory.
I know.
And you better look for who do you want to meet, who do you want to connect with. Not only our members, but in NAWBO, our corporate partners. We have some amazing corporate partners who are looking to support women in business, right? And so, but if you don't reach out there, if you don't show up, and some of them have their own events, right? Those are other ways to show up. So it's not just showing up for NAWBO, it's showing up at whatever events you need to show up at in order to grow yourself as a leader and a business owner, right? And to get yourself out there, right? But that's another place where money sometimes is an issue, right? And so you've got to plan for what are the things that are most going to benefit you in what you do. And there are a ton of organizations out there. But again, that's the good thing about NAWBO, because you can go to different women and say, what do you belong to? And how is that helping you, right? Or how did that help you to get to this place, right? And I think the last part, speak up. It's unfortunate that if you close your eyes and listen to the news, it sounds like we're back 50 years ago with some of those same things. But I think for African American people, for women in the United States of America, that's not a new day, right? I know that there's a lot of drama out there now, but these are the issues, the reason NAWBO exists, because 52 years ago, you and I would not be able to get financing to own a business because we were women. And that seems like it's not such a long time ago, but that's the truth of it. And NAWBO started in that advocacy vein. How do we make sure that women have the same opportunities as men to be able to be business owners? And the truth of the matter, though I'm sure there wasn't the same kind of data then that there is now, is that women have always been entrepreneurial. They've always done the business things, right? And they support the economy in immeasurable ways. Right. And so making that legit so that you don't have as many struggles, though if you look at the data, we're still struggling to get financing, right? And we're still struggling in a lot of other ways, entrepreneurial wise, right? And so it's no more or less important now to advocate and to let your voice be heard than it was then. And like I said, I know because we're dealing with all of the executive orders and all of the transition issues, it's heightened. But I tell people this is another day in the life, this is it's getting more attention, but it's another day in the life. NAWBO was advocating for these kinds of issues before Trump was elected president, right? And so we can't let any moment in time convince us that we don't have to advocate, because as soon as we do, then it's done, right? And so that's why the speak up piece, and it's not only speaking up in terms of political things, but it's speaking up in terms of your needs, right? Because if you show up for an event, but there's nothing there that fits your needs, right? That's like sort of frustrating. Or the title doesn't match the thing, right? And so you've got to speak up in whatever organizations you're involved in and say, hey, this is what I need, right? And so all of those pieces are really critical. One of the workshops I do for women is called Village and Purpose Building, right? And so identifying that purpose, because most women who are entrepreneurs, unless you've inherited something, their business is their passion, right? They started it or they engaged with it because they saw a need or they had an experience, whatever that thing is, it is a part of who they are, right? And so sticking with that purpose and being okay with that purpose, right? Identifying that purpose is really an important part. But then you got to build a village around it. Right, because like I said, you need people, right? And I think I'm not really big on Facebook. I used to, and then like I would get all these things. I'm like, I don't want to send out something to 25 people, And I was just like, this is not what it became something that didn't fit my needs. So I'm much more involved with LinkedIn. But I got something on Facebook one day from someone that said, you are the sum total of the 5 people you are most involved with, right? And it was one of those few things that made me think like, ooh, who are those people, right? And so eventually I wound up making a list, and at that time I was the primary caregiver for my mom and dad, right? And many of us have those roles, or we're parents and we have children, right? And so I made that list and I thought, okay, this amount of my time is going to that. But then I looked at some other people on the list and I was like, oh, okay, so I'm the therapist, right? Like, and you have those people in your life that you want to provide things for, but an empty cup, right?
Yeah,
And so you can't have so much in that first five that you have nothing left, right? And you should have people in your first five, and some people refer to it as your starting five, right? That fill you, right? And so taking a really intentional look at who are those five people and how am I making sure that my cup is full enough that I can do these other things, because I could not take care of my parents, but I needed to make sure I had people taking care of me, right? And so that balance. And as I continue to explore that, there's even research out there that talks about how many true friends, how big your village can be, right? And so in research, a village, most people will have 100 people in their lifetime that they have some reasonable relationship with, right? But only 25 of those people are really that village.
Right.
And so being intentional about who's in your village, right? And so I have women and men, right? Because men and women think differently.
Sure.
And so if you're a female entrepreneur and you don't have some men in your village, ooh, girlfriend.
Add them.
Okay? Because men are very much more task-oriented. And when you drift into that mission drift, they're going to pull you back. Okay, that's not your, right? And so having a village that really meets your needs, right? And all of your needs. So I have people in my village, we just have lunch and pray, right? I have people in my village that are my get out the middle of the road before you get hit by the bus people, right? That I run my new ideas by. Girl, I want to do this. Or, hey, I want to do this, right? And they go, now, Jamyce, remember when you tried that podcast, right? Like, there are people who are for real with me, right? And I have a relationship with them so they can say what they need to say, right? And I can receive it, because that's the other thing.
That's true.
If we surround ourselves with people who are giving us advice, but we don't trust them enough to take that advice, you might as well not have those people.
That's right.
Right? And sometimes it's hard advice, right? Like, because
we don't want to hear it.
we don't, right? We don't want to hear it, or we get that imposter syndrome or that sense of failure, right? And as women, often we are so emotional. Those books like Men Are Like Waffles and Women Are Like Spaghetti that really make you think about, to what extent is this me, and how is that impacting my leadership and my ability to be an entrepreneur, right? And so having those things are just so critical. To even sometimes we forget to celebrate ourselves. Right. And so I have people in my village that we just, girl, where we going for the margarita? Right. Because sometimes you just, and all we talk about is the great things. We won't let the challenges in that conversation. Right. So I think there are organizations and individuals, because you also, in my village, NAWBO is definitely in my village.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta. That's in my village. I have had in my lifetime the opportunity to meet some of the world's most amazing women. And when you are in a room with amazing women, it elevates you to think about, no boundaries and nothing is impossible, right? Because you see women who have overcome all kinds of obstacles and then put themselves out there for other women to know, you too, right, can do this.
That's right.
So just that whole village. And building that. And I think, like I said, NAWBO is a part of that village. Right. I didn't intend to be president, but I also know myself well enough to know that when I engage at 110%.
Yes, you do. You do.
Either if I'm in, I'm in.
Yes.
Right. And you get all of me. So I started on the board, not on the board, but in a committee. That's what I recommend for everyone who is a part of NAWBO,
Okay.
right? Find a committee that fits your skill set. And for me, that was programs, right? It allows you to use your gifts. Other people get to see you use your gifts, so you meet other people who have similar interests, both members and corporate partners, right? And that helps you build that reputation and recognition and opportunities. So I did that.
Well, in case you didn't hear that. Okay. Now, well, I just
say
wanted
it,
to
say
say
it.
that because, like, you said a lot, and I'll kind of rewind a little bit. You know, one of the things that you said that really struck me was like, make sure that you invest in what fits your needs, and so that means you have to do some investigation and know, because there's a lot of organizations out there.
Yes.
And then when you join whatever organization, speak up. Lift up, show up. You know, that is part of this, like you said, joining a committee or something to be more involved, because it's not just going to rain on our laps like, so I really love that. And I want to just reiterate that, because as small business owners, as females, sometimes we just need this guidance. And I want you to like just pour into us today. So I wanted to like mention that again, but go ahead, please.
But it also has to fit what are your finances, right? Which is why I always try to have a table and invite people. And there are other women who do that as well. And everything doesn't have to cost money, right? So you've got to really look at that in terms of how it fits you. Right. But I spent time on the programs committee, which as I said, allowed me to meet other entrepreneurs who were doing what I did or did it in a different way. Like there are all kinds of learnings that come from that. And then there are corporate partner relationships, so organizations get to see what you do. One of the mantras of NAWBO Indianapolis is think NAWBO first. And so when other women get to see what you do, they can then be an advocate or an ally for you, because I believe everyone needs to have a mentor, an ally, and an advocate, right? And so the more people experience what you do and what you are capable of doing, the more likely it is you have those, right? I think it always happens to me some way or another. I get tapped for whatever is the next thing, right? That's how I got all the way through all the things I did in education. That's the same thing with NAWBO. So after serving on the committees and volunteering, someone asked me about joining the board. And like I said, I'm always in 110%. So if my skills will help, that's what I want to do. 2018, I became a part of the board, and now is NAWBO board nominations time. You need to be a premier member, but I think if you have engaged in things and are interested in bringing policy and strategy and new ideas about the way things can go, the board is a great place, right? So the board has elected members and then also advisory members who are our corporate partners. And so it's a great room to be in. It's a great space to be in terms of your development, right? Your opportunity to grow, but also your opportunity to shape and influence and bring a lens for women business owners. So I did a bunch of things on the board. I am a parliamentarian, so I'm really a concrete, sequential, list-making person. So that kind of task, right, is built for me. But it also allowed me to understand how the chapter and the organization worked, right? So I served as parliamentarian, I served as secretary, I served on a couple of other committees that other than programs, right, as a part of the board, because that's board responsibility, right? But also looking for new members, right, and bringing people to the table for board membership. So, all of those responsibilities. I'm not sure the moment that it happened, but I know that Anne Hathaway is somehow responsible for it. She was going to be president, and NAWBO has the succession from president-elect to president. And she said, Jamyce, this is really something you should do. And I was like, ooh, I don't know. But, if you're in, right, you're in. And so I had the amazing opportunity to be mentored by Anne Hathaway, who is she and I have similar but different styles, right? Sometimes there's the friction of similarity, and I think we blossomed in that friction of similarity. I learned so much from her, and she was so supportive in my second year, because we do 2-year terms, as president-elect, helping me think about what I wanted to accomplish as president, but also us working together to position the organization. So when the mantle passes, you have the opportunity, because it's one thing to want to accomplish things and then something else to not have the organization or company, right, be in the place where that can happen. So I think I so appreciate how much she worked with me in that transition time. She's now immediate past and working with the NAWBO Indie Foundation, but she and I still get together and have dinner. I have that sounding board of, oh, okay, but Ann, when you were president, did this, you know, it's great to have that. And she was so gracious when I first started. She organized a dinner for me with all of the past presidents. And what an amazing room that was to be in, to hear them talk about their administrations and the things that they wanted to accomplish. And we ended up with them each giving me their advice. And so, you know, but that's what I mean when I say lifting up. Like that is such an amazing way to lift up, right? And so they gave me advice. And some of it was, don't do this, right? Like, think about this before you do this, right? Which is a great thing to have, right? So that's how I got to the presidency, right? And it has been an amazing year and a half. Like I finish in June. And like I said, serendipitous things happen to me all the time. So my focus, like always, has been, how do I ensure NAWBO members get the best ROI for their membership? Because, like I said, you're paying for that. And for many women, that's a heavy lift when you're trying to start a business, right? For some women, you're in the business, but the decisions that you make about where you put your funds, right? And even women who don't have to worry about where they put the funds, you know, what's in it for me? And so that ROI, and that's such a huge span, right? From the I just started yesterday to my company's making 10 million plus is a huge span, right? And looking at how do we get ROI for everyone, right? That rarely happens in one event, but we have to think about over the course of a year of NAWBO programming, how do we make sure we've touched everybody, right? And so that really was what my focus was in our strategic planning sessions. And then also making sure, because we are a 501c6, that our finances are in the position to be able to do those things that we want to do, right? So looking at that. But coming into this year, as my last year, I wanted it to be fun. I wanted people to be engaged. I wanted to make sure that ROI happened. And so I talked to who was then assisting our executive director, Tracy Justice, and said, hey, will you record a message that I can send out prior to the luncheon, inviting everyone to come and engage. I got a DJ, which I don't know that there was a president before me that said, like, we're gonna have a DJ, we're gonna have some fun, right? And so Tracy recorded that. And I'm a fairly spontaneous person. Like, I knew in my mind I wanted to invite people, but I didn't like have a script or right. And so out of my mouth came, join me on my President's Farewell Tour. It wasn't planned. It so was not planned, right? It just came, like, I want you to come. Come with me this whole year, right? And do things and experience things and have a great time and meet people, right? That's right. That's what I said.
And it's taken off.
And there it happened, right? And so I didn't have a plan for it, right? It just happened. And then people started calling me and texting me and emailing me. So what's next on the tour, right? Because in August we had the DJ. We gave the book away for free on the women's leadership thinking, right? And I think people had a good time. We played NAWBO bingo, right? We had a good time. So people were like, what's next?
Right, like, we got to keep this going.
Yes, we got to continue. Like, what's next on the tour? And so I really then had to think about, how do I wrap these things that I've talked about into that tour, right? But also, we have committees who are doing programming and planning, and you don't want to step on those things either. So it has to be an integrated part of what we do. So the next thing that happened was December, right? Because we do a December luncheon, and the program committee determined that they wanted to have Nikki Blaine, who is an amazing, Nikki is so amazing designer,
Oh, my
right?
goodness.
Do a fashion show with some of our members and corporate partners, board members and corporate partners being in the Nikki Blaine fashion show, which is fun.
As models.
Yes. But how does it connect back to your business? Remember, I'm all about ROI.
Yes, you
So
are.
I want everybody to have a good time and be in some Nikki Blaine fashion, but how do you leave there with something as a woman business owner? Right. And so for me, fashion and branding went together.
Right.
And so I reached out, like if I'm on ROI, we need to be member to member.
Right.
How do I involve members, let other members get to know what members do in that space?
Yes.
Right. And so I reached out to some amazing women. Among them was you, right?
you.
Because I had actually sat in on your workshop, the workshop that you did free with the branding audit, which was so amazing.
Thank you.
And I'm not new in my business, but it really helped me think about some changes I needed to make, right? So I thought this is something everyone can benefit from.
Right.
And so I reached out to several other members, Jen Eads, who does podcasting, and Tracy Justice, who is more about the mindset that you bring, and asked, would you be willing, right, to do a workshop as a follow-up to this event, right? Free, right? So we're sort of exchanging. I'm back to my exchange.
Yes.
You get to get your business out there, right? And the members get to benefit from that.
ROI.
Right? And so we had women, we had some amazing feedback.
Oh, my goodness.
Just amazing feedback from those experiences, right? And so that was December. We've got 2 more coming up. In February, we decided the membership committee wanted to have an event, an evening event, because usually we're doing something during the day.
Right, that's right.
And so they looked into doing a wine tasting at Daniel's Vineyard,
okay.
right? And so I was like, oh, okay, well, what can we do with that? So it's wine, we need a little food.
Yeah, well,
And
true.
We need a little food,
Yes.
we need a little food. And it's February, where we usually focus on diversity and culture. And so that's just perfect. I sought out some chefs. So Chef Felicia, Chef LaQuisha, and then we have a corporate partner, Paco's Tacos, who are going to provide finger food from different cultures, because it's Culture Month, right? That to go with those wine pairings, right? And so that's one piece, which is nice. So you get to feature them. Oftentimes we have events where we need someone, whether it's business or personal, right? So here we go again, thinking NAWBO first, right?
Yes.
And making those connections. But also, how do we support your business growth? And so business culture has a lot of different aspects to it. Sure. So we will have 2 members and 1 affinity partner who will be giving brief overviews of things like, how do you hire well? Right?
Yes,
Like, so how do you make sure, even hiring in terms of when you outboard your services, like I have a finance person. I'm not doing my own finances. I'm not hiring a finance person.
Right.
But if you're going to do those things, how do you do those things well, right? Also, employee benefits,
That's a big one.
that's a big thing. And sometimes you're the employee. And what does it look like if you're the employee, right? And how do you make sure you have benefits? And we actually have an affinity partner that is building a retirement platform just for NAWBO members that gives access to new entrepreneurs, because sometimes that's a big thing. If you're not setting aside money now, like when you need it and you don't have it, it's too late, right? So those are the kinds of things that will be offered while you're sipping your wine and tasting your goodies. You can also grow and learn about how you can have a better business culture, and then you can schedule follow-up time with any of those individuals or organizations, right, to build your business culture. Right. So
well, you think about a lot of things. Like I really love the way you like incorporate the ROI and still having fun and everything. So I love that. Keep going.
Well, I think if we don't enjoy it, it's hard for it to have meaning, right? So one of the challenges of doing programming is getting people to show up, right? And the what you do really influences that. So if we just said April or March, come and hear about benefits, no one's showing up for that, right? But when we say, taste a little wine, have a little food, network a little bit, right? You expand, right? People what people are willing to do or feel comfortable doing, right? Because in that finance space or, that insurance space, or people just go,
Yeah, it's hard. Those are
it is.
difficult
It is.
conversations.
And either you don't feel like you know enough or you feel like you've got it already, right?
Right.
And so trying to make sure that the ROI is there.
Yes.
But also the coming together of people is important, like who you meet in that room, right?
Yes.
And the conversations that you have. So those are the last two formal things, I think. Every time I say that, something else comes up. But the programs committee is working. We were blessed to get a $25,000 grant this year. It's a part of our strategic plan to expand our fund development. But just because you plan it doesn't mean it happens. And our executive director, Leanne Richardson, has worked really hard with another member, Jaleesa, who is a grant writer, to look for things. And we've been really blessed to have those. And so the programs committee is going to be looking at an event for April and May as a part of that grant, right? The last month for me is June.
Well, what about the AI stuff?
Yes, so March.
Okay.
I'm really excited about March because I'm just going to have to confess that I am in the AI for Dummies group, right? Like my oldest son, who is so tech, right? He's my tech. Well, both of my kids are way better at it than me, but my oldest son is who I consider to be the ultimate, right? In that that I always call and go, I can't figure out how to, and he's like, Mom, do this. I'm like, okay, and I thank him and say, you're a really good teacher.
He got it from you because he started in teaching and education.
But, he's like, you're not using AI? I'm like, okay. And he helped me, get started, but I don't feel comfortable in the space. And then there are all of the things out there about how dangerous and like there's just so much out there. And so I know I need to be in the space, but how am I in the space effectively? And so again, NAWBO, I reached out to Sonny Williams and said, hey, you're my tech guru mentor, right? This is what I want to do. I want people who are like me, who aren't really sure what it is, all the way to people who are using it and believe they're using it effectively to get something from a workshop.
Another ROI, yes.
And so she uses a company called Blazing, and she's a tech company. So if Sonny can use it, that means it can provide ROI across the board, right? And so I contacted them. They do some amazing things, and like you, they have a community focus to get technology access broadly, right? And so on March the 12th, for members only, the first 50 who sign up, we're going to have an AI workshop. Virtual. It'll be 2 hours. And in the beginning, they're going to make sure we're signed up in something, know what we're doing, some of those pluses and minuses of AI so we can feel comfortable. And then they're going to give us access to their platform.
That's the cool part.
Tell us about it. It is. So all of they have tons of platforms. All of them are the paid version, because I think that's another thing. You do these sample things and you don't get full access, and so then you want to do something and you find out you got to pay a small fortune or give an arm in order to be able to do it, right? So they're going to give access to their platforms with the idea of people producing some type of product or commercial or something, so you actually have an end result, right? Which is great in and of itself. But then for 30 days after the workshop, you will continue to have access to their platforms, which I think is really important, because we oftentimes go to these things, we write something down, we take a bunch of notes, right? And then we get back to our office 2 days later and go, what? What did this thing mean that I said, right? And so to have the opportunity to continue to explore those platforms, I think is really powerful for it to become a part of what you do, right? And then at the end of the 30 days, Blazing as a company offers a variety of subscriptions, some of them as small as $10 that give you access to their paid programming. So I think it's a great opportunity for our members to explore, right, to develop what works for them, and then to be able to continue applying that to their business. So I'm really excited about,
That is so cool. So before we move on, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some of because you were dropping a lot of really good stuff, and I was like, oh my God. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to watch this. I know I've been blessed, and you're just being, One of the things I wanted to highlight in your conversation so far was like how, we talked about a lot about relationships, being intentional too. And I know you said that, a lot of things happen, like serendipities for you, but I'm almost wondering, did you have it all planned? Because it seems almost strategic, like joining the, committee and just being involved,
Right,
like.
Some yes and some no, right? I think, as I said, if whatever organization you join, certainly if you're a woman business owner, I'd love for you to join NAWBO.
Right.
But whatever organization you join, you have to be in it, right? You have to show up for it, right? But it has to fit where you are.
Right.
So don't join an organization with a bunch of people that don't do what you do and then think it's somehow going to benefit you, right? Or if you're an introvert, right, find somebody to go with so that you don't miss the opportunities, right? And have a plan for yourself. That I know not all of us are gregarious and going to go up to people and ask or introduce ourselves or like, have a strategy, right? And be in organizations that will recognize you, right? Because if you're an introvert, a big old room of 500 people is probably not, if that's the kind of thing that always happens, what are you going to do to make that benefit you, right? So I'm intentional in terms of that, right? And when I jump in, I'm intentional about what I bring and how I bring that, right? So I also sit on the board of Dress for Success. And I chose that, like I was doing diversity supports for their professional women's group and other things to support the organization. And when I had the opportunity then to become a part of the board, I had to jump in. Like, what do you need for me to do? So I started by chairing the DEI B committee, right? Because that I could bring that resource to the board, right? Now I am secretary, and part of that progression is that at some point I'll probably be president of the board for Dress for Success. But that was very intentional, right? Like these are the skills I can bring. It fits the mission that I have as a person, but also my skills. And I think that part of me is very intentional.
I love that.
Right. But as I said, like the President's Farewell Tour just came out of my mouth. There was no plan. But once it was out, then the intentional part of me is fully engaged, right? And I think everyone's personality is different, but I think you have to be open to both sides, right? Not all of us are planners, and that's okay, right? Many of us are much more spontaneous, and that's okay too. But wherever you are, you have to make sure you engage in things that fit you, right?
So that requires also knowing yourself too, and what your goals are.
Yes. But that's where your village is really.
Ooh, that's good. Oh, look at how you're tying it all together.
But that's where your village, because sometimes we can't know everything or see everything, right? And there's something called the Johari window, which has 4 components, right? And a part of it is that there are things that you know about yourself that you know. But there are things about yourself that you don't know that other people know, right? And if you don't have people in your village that can help you know that, you may miss opportunities, you may burn bridges, right? And so being okay with who you are, right? And letting other people coach you, support you, and guide you. Like you've got to be open to those kind of things if you're going to be successful. Right. And I would say happy, right? Because oftentimes we put ourselves in positions and we know we should not be there. Like, why are you here, right? And every time you got to get ready to go there, you get a headache or a stomach ache or you tired, like whatever are the things that your body and your brain, something says to you, ooh, right? And you grin and bear through it. But why? Because if it's not doing what you needed to do, it's not the place.
Ooh, that was good. Sorry. That was so good.
Stop holding on to it. Find another place, right? And sometimes you can't do that on your own. You need people in your village, right? And you need to be able to say to someone, I went to this event, right? And I felt like I was in a room of strangers and I tried to talk, whatever is the thing, right? And the person can say, well, like, if that's it, let it go, right? What are some other opportunities, right, that would fit you better? Let's do it together. Let's look right? Hey, let's ask ChatGPT. What are four things that fit Jamyce that she wants to do this, right? ChatGPT will give you a list. There are all kinds of ways that you can do that.
Yeah.
But I think we have to stay focused on that, what fits us, right? And I can't say that was always me. I think that's another part of development, right? But when you're trying to fit in to get in, usually it's not the thing. And sometimes we want things so badly, right? We do. But we have to ask ourselves why. Why do you want that so badly, right? And what are other ways you can get that? So if you need recognition, and there is nothing wrong, like if you're not tooting your horn, there's no tooting, right? So there's nothing wrong with tooting your horn.
That's right.
But tooting it in the right way, in the right place, like how do you make sure that's what happens?
Right.
Right. And so you may not know what the best way, and you may think you're doing it and it's not coming across the way you think it is.
True.
Right? So just making sure that you have people who support you, that you listen to.
That's right.
To help you with that. So,
good. All right. So let's go back to your final stop.
Yes. So June 30th is my last day as president.
So wait, first of all, how do you feel about June 30th coming,
I have mixed feelings,
Okay.
right? I think like every leader who is looking down the path at the light at the end of the tunnel, because leadership, I don't care how, I think I've had a great term, but there's still challenges, right? And so looking down the pike, I think if you ask anyone who uses the words past, past president, past whatever it is, there's a sense of, whew, like I'm almost there, right? To pass that torch to wherever it's going. So there's some of that, right? I'm an overachiever, I think you see. So I need to feel like I've made some difference, right? That part is important to me, right? Not so much for me, though some of it is for me. Like you don't want to set out to do something and accomplish nothing, right? But also because I believe in the organization and what the organization can do for people. And if I can't bring my skills to that, or if my skills didn't elevate that to the next level, when I pass the torch, I want it to be that the next person can take it and do what she wants to do and is positioned for that, right? Whatever that is, which is why I appreciated the time I had with Anne Hathaway as president-elect to talk about, like, what does that look like, right? So from that standpoint, but also I want to leave with a bang.
Yes.
Like maybe that's like, I don't know.
Do it.
So I want my legacy to mean something in the passing of the torch. I want people to have that enjoyment and to say, when Jamyce was president, here's things that we did, and here's the things we can do next, right? I want people to say, when Jamyce was president, I joined, and here's why I joined, and I've encouraged other women to join because I had this great experience, right? So those are the things that are important to me. As I leave, the presidency. I think I am most excited, and it's probably the thing that is most exciting to me for ending my term. We have, even before I became president, the brand of NAWBO has been something we have, I don't want to say struggle, but we've gone back and forth in terms of how do we get that out there. I think NAWBO is probably one of the state's best kept secrets. The relationships that happen, the businesses that are built, all of those, the amazing women.
Impact,
who have had impact, not just in Indianapolis, but throughout the state, in some cases throughout the country, right? We know it. As NAWBO, but other women don't know it. And so women who could be benefiting don't know that it's there. And so how do we up the ante on that brand? And we've tried many things over the course of our time. And we're in all the spaces. We're on LinkedIn, and we're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram. But how do we get it out there? How do we tell the story broader, right? Is really critical, right? And so I'm excited. I'm so excited that you agreed to work with us to do a NAWBO Indianapolis edition of the Boss Ladies magazine. I think it is the most amazing opportunity, and I've had the opportunity to share that with many members, and everyone just lights up, right? Because there are so many stories that haven't been told. There are so many things that we have accomplished since the start of NAWBO Indianapolis, almost 30 years ago, that, have impacted this city, have impacted the state, have impacted other chapters across the country. And so to be able to put that down historically, right? To have it both in hard copy and virtually, because virtually it can travel the world, right? And we can get that out there in a much broader way. And I grew up in a family where history is critical, right? That we tell the stories of who we are. And I think that's one of the things that today's young people don't have as much of, right? I meet young people who have no idea who their grandparents are, right? And I just think about the stories that are missing, right? The experiences, even how you are grateful, what your gratitude is, right? So my dad, I have lost both my mom and my dad, but my dad grew up on a farm in Missouri, right? Where if they didn't grow it or kill it, they didn't eat it, right? And so the stories that he told, I can remember as a girl being sick. And he had all these things he would mix up, and like take this. We didn't go to the store and buy some over-the-counter stuff or have a prescription. It was like Daddy's whatever Daddy had and he put together, right? That's what. But those things worked because they didn't have a grocery store, right? But those stories, right? And my children benefited from those stories, right? I remember, and my dad growing up on a farm grew like everything you could think of, but ate very little from a can or processed because, he was, right? And so he loved popcorn, and he always wanted me to pop popcorn. Of course, now we live in the age of popcorn in the microwave, but I always kept a can of popcorn to pop for my dad. And my dad was at the house. My youngest was there, and my dad said, "Hey, will you pop me some popcorn?" I said, "Sure." And my youngest said, "Oh, I'll do it, Papa." And he went to get the popcorn from the bag and, to put in the microwave. And my dad said, "Papa don't eat popcorn from the microwave." And my son looked at him like, "Okay, where are you getting popcorn from?" That's not in the microwave. And so I popped popcorn on the stove, and he was fascinated. And my dad told him the stories about that. And then my parents had some land in Illinois that my dad farmed. And so the next time the kids were there, he showed my son corn growing, right, that would become popcorn, right? And so I say that to say the stories that we miss, right? And NAWBO has such amazing and important stories that we need to share. That not only the community, but current, every NAWBO member doesn't know all those stories.
That is true.
And new NAWBO members should hear those stories.
That's right.
And so being able to put that down just is invaluable. And it will never go away, right? Because
and also being able to remind ourselves of the impact.
Absolutely.
That's also really great. So sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. But I think those are important things, right? And also, it's the opportunity to showcase your business, right? So there are many, many opportunities. But the other side of it for me, because of the ROI, doing the kinds of things that I'm doing in the President's Farewell Tour that allow members to attend things at no cost, cost money, right? And if we don't have a budget for those things, they will go away.
Right.
And so I want a part of my legacy to be leaving funding, right? That then the future committees can say, okay, these are going to be things that we pay for because we have the money to do that, right? And so the other part of the magazine,
which is one of the reasons I'm so excited about being a part of that,
is to raise at least $10,000 for the NAWBO Indy Foundation, so that money is present to continue to support the ROI of our members. But that wouldn't happen if it weren't for you.
Well,
right?
And it was your idea too.
Well,
this was you.
But I think you and I sat on a panel at I think it was a CCC panel. I'm really very excited about that. And also, like, I want people to know what you do.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone I talked to, I was having a conversation with Akila Darden the other day, who is going to be, right?
Yes.
And everyone I talk to talks about the way you make them feel. And I think that's important in that lift up piece, right? It's not just about having your headshot.
Right.
It's about how you feel,
Yes.
right? As a woman, as a business owner.
We wear
right?
multiple hats.
Yes. As the leader in your organization, whatever that is, to be in a space where someone validates you, right? Someone makes you feel good, right? Someone takes away the cloud of questions and doubt that we oftentimes carry. Even when our businesses go well, it's still, right?
Still,
Oh, what's going to be we're waiting for the other shoe to drop, or we're waiting for the thing to happen, right? So to be able to have a time when you can just feel good about who you are, like, it's so amazing. And I'd love for everybody to be, like, I want a daily version of the Boss Ladies magazine. Like, yes. I mean, I think it's just really a critical piece for us in that lift up piece, right? As women.
Yes.
You know, so I'm very excited about that. Just, I can't even, we haven't even started the work yet. Next week, the newsletter will go out, the NAWBO newsletter will go out, and we'll ask for members who want to join a committee to make sure we capture all those lenses and all the history. This week, I'll be sending out this week and next week personal invitations for our past chapter leaders, because they have so many stories to tell, right? And then also our past board members, because we've, again, lots of stories and growth and development and impact. So inviting them to be a part of that, right? Before we do the full push for ads and, you know, those kind of things. How do we make sure we're telling the stories, right? So I'm really excited about where it will go.
Me too. And so so the experience you were talking about is, you know, the experience that I typically give to, you know, the hair, the makeup, you know, serving wine and chocolate covered strawberries, you know, just to kind of make you feel great, you know, because, you know, it's more than just the photo shoot itself. It's just that feeling of giving poured back into. So really excited about that. I'm also excited about raising $10,000 and more because, you know, for your legacy, I can see everything that you've shared, you know, here, and even from what I know about you, you're all about ROI, seeing results for people, and it just shines through as you were talking. And so, you know, I know you've been talking to a lot of people, and there's been so much great support, you know, for people to help raise money and also tell the story of NAWBO. But I want to touch on, for those people that are maybe thinking, how can I be involved? You know, we've itemized a lot of ways that people can be involved in it. Do you want to just kind of share so that you kind of have an idea?
Yeah, we don't want to leave anybody out,
Right.
and we want to recognize everybody, right? And so there are various levels that people will be able to buy in, because everyone's not going to be able to afford to be a feature person, right? So you can just give to the foundation, right? And it doesn't matter how much you give. Everyone who gives to the foundation will be listed in the magazine. So we also are looking at doing a silent auction. And so maybe you have something that you can donate, right? Or participate in the auction, because both people who donate and people who bid, win the bid, will be listed in the magazine. We want to acknowledge everyone who contributes, right? You may want to provide a tribute, right, which is different than a feature, that you want to give a tribute to someone in your family, someone, a woman who has made an impact in your life or in business. So we want to make sure we have as many opportunities as possible for people to be able to be a part of the magazine.
It's amazing. I love. So when we were talking about this idea and you're sharing some of this, which I have to give you credit. This was your idea, and I so love that it's part of your tour, and really the end of it, like the last act. And my hope is that when we look back 1 year from now, like, it will be, I mean, I am short of words. Like, in terms of raising the money, we surpassed that $10,000.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, and then also, like, the stories would have so many testimonies come out of that story, because, like you said, so many people that are even part of NAWBO doesn't even know the impact. What's available to them. You know, but then also the people on the outside too, to see NAWBO Indy has been in for like about 20 years, right?
Over 20 years,
That is an amazing amount of information, impact. You know, so I'm just looking forward to, like, seeing what we come up with and just the story and,
Yeah. I'm excited. I hope we get a really good cross section of members for the committee,
Yes.
right? Because I know the stories. I know the stories that I've heard. I
Right.
know the stories that I've experienced. But I've only been a member since 2016.
Right.
So there were tons of stories that happened before that, right? And so how do we not? We don't want to miss anything, right? That's the
Yes.
thing. We don't want to miss anything.
Right.
And so how do we make sure we get a collection of people or reach out to people
Yeah.
that we don't miss the stories,
Yes.
right? We don't miss the people because there have been so many different women who have impacted NAWBO in so many different ways,
Right.
So just hoping that we are. If we're looking back a year from now,
Yeah.
it's everyone's coffee table book,
Yes,
right?
that would be great,
And people are
yes.
still telling the stories of, or pointing out to women, using that as a tool
Yes.
to solicit new members, right? Using that as a tool when we visit Congress, when we are talking with our legislators. These are the stories of NAWBO.
Right, the
NAWBO
impact.
Indianapolis does an event called Fuel, which helps to develop women in terms of the political sphere. If you're interested in running for an office or a position, how do you develop those skills? And through Fuel, there are many members who have stepped out and stepped up to lead in their communities or run for offices in their communities. And so just so many stories, right? Just so many stories. And then NAWBO also has given awards and recognized women who are not necessarily NAWBO women, but who are blazing trails, whether it's in Indianapolis or throughout the state. And so, tons of stories.
Right.
And we have given an Entrepreneur of the Year award every year that gives scholarship funding to a new entrepreneur to pursue something they need in terms of learning about growing their business in some way. So we've been doing that for a whole bunch of years, right? And so where are those women?
Right. Let them tell the stories of
Right,
the impact.
exactly.
After, oh, wow.
Exactly. What have they accomplished? What are they doing now?
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm a pay it forward person,
Yes, you
right?
are.
So, I always say to women, when I invite you to my table, I say to you, hit that directory
Yes.
and make sure you're intentional about who you want to meet and, what you want to learn, but also pay it forward.
Yes.
Like, how can you help someone else? Because no matter where you are in your business journey, you can help someone else.
Right.
And I think sometimes, especially newer business owners, think, I can't tell anybody anything.
Right.
But being in a group of people who are new, sharing what your strategies are, right, is a great way to help other women. So I'm just looking forward to all the wonderful things that can happen from the magazine.
That's great. Okay, so after June 30th comes July 1st.
Yes.
What's next?
Ooh. So NAWBO-wise, I become the immediate past. At some point, the immediate past president rolls on to the foundation board to work with the funding piece. And so that will happen. But there are opportunities at NAWBO National, at the NAWBO National level. So we have Trisetta Briggs in our chapter who is on the board. And so running for or submitting for the NAWBO board is a possibility. I'm not saying I'm doing that, but that's in the what would be next in the natural scheme of things. But there is also a group that I'm probably leaning more towards. It is what NAWBO calls the PSAC. It is a group of NAWBO members who have served in leadership roles, who then are a part of a committee that support NAWBO chapter leaders. And I think that really sort of fits my skill set of how do I help other leaders. NAWBO Indy is among the larger NAWBO chapters, but there are a lot of smaller chapters, chapter leaders who need supports, who need the collaboration with other chapter leaders to help with those strategies and challenges and to share the successes, right? And so I'm leaning towards putting in an application to do that next, to help other leaders. in the way that people have helped me. So from a NAWBO standpoint, that probably would be what I would do next. And I think I mentioned I'm on the board for Dress for Success.
Right.
And I really enjoy working with Stepping Out in Style, which is the major fundraiser.
Yes.
So engaging in that work is what I'll be doing at that level. From a business standpoint, in a transition, I think.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out what that transition looks like. So my husband is retired. He's on year 5 or 6 of being retired, has taken up golf. So right now, as we speak, he's in Palm Springs golfing, right?
That's nice.
And so, he's always, Jamyce, are you coming with? And I'm like, oh, well, I got to do this and I got to do this. And some things I can do like from there, from wherever it is that he winds up golfing, especially this time of year when it's cold here
Right.
and he's going somewhere warm,
Right.
But sometimes I'm not able to do that. And so, he's looking at me with that one eye like, how much, right?
How
and
much
then,
longer?
Yes, exactly. And then my oldest, and my daughter-in-law have my first grandbaby, who will be 3 in March.
Oh, that's great.
And I never got the love of grandchildren, but once you have one, it's like, oh my goodness, yes. And so my oldest is like, Mom, how much longer? Like, are you
Everybody's
gonna
counting down
work?
for
Right.
you, right?
Everybody's like, how much longer are you gonna work? Right. And we still try to get. They're in Dallas, so we try to get to Dallas every few months. So we'll be
Okay.
there for the 3 birthday party,
Oh,
right?
that's-
But it's hard for me, I think, going back to why I started my business. I was doing things because it's who I am, right?
Right.
And my business model is, I don't know that there are other people, I don't know how many other people have the same model, but I have always been the only employee of my company, right? And that was my intent from the beginning, but I only do projects with teams. So I have people who are my 1099s, people I have worked with who are in a variety of industries, right? And so when I'm applying for an RFP or when I'm looking at doing a project, I reach out to those people who become a part of the team,
Okay.
right? And so we do teamwork because as a solo person, you can't bring every lens.
Right.
And I'm trying to impact change in culture. And so, we need to be able to talk about, did you hear the same thing I heard? And, what do you think about this? And so I only work with teams, but it's just me.
I see.
So my oldest, who is a business guy extraordinaire, was like, just ramp it up, put protocols in place and sell it, right? But to me, that's like selling me. Like, I don't know how to sell me, right? Like, I'm talking about relationship building. And
Right.
like I said, I have clients that I haven't serviced that I still have relationships with. So I think in that transition, what I'm looking to do is more collaboration, less upfront and more collaboration. How can I bring my skills, my team, to the work other people are doing that they may need those supports,
Okay.
right? So that I can then say to my husband, yes, I can go. Yes, honey, let's go. Let's go there because I don't have to be as forward facing.
Right.
Right. And so I think that's where I'm headed. Although, and I said I was going to take on fewer things to get to that place.
I was going to say, like, everything you've listed so far doesn't sound like fewer.
Right, I know. That's the hard part,
Right.
right? And I was at an event with someone actually who is a NAWBO member, and we were having this conversation about, so what are you going to do next? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do less. And then she said, well, what are you doing now? And I started going through the list, and she was like, what? What happened to less? I said, but things come that just seem like, oh, this is my mission, right? I said, I really need to figure out how to say no. And so she took a piece of paper and made a square that said no, and she gave it to me, and she said, okay, when people come, just hold up this thing. Hold that up. So I'm like, I don't, and so I had it, right? And I folded it up and put it in my pocket, and I got to think about what I was wearing when I when I folded that up. I need to have a no sign in all my pockets,
yes.
right?
I don't think so, though. I mean, I feel like just knowing you and your energy, your passion to help others, I feel like something else even bigger is going to come along, and then you're going to be
I
like,
have no idea, right? But it goes back to that, to those who much is given, much is required.
Sure.
And so as long as I can support, like I want to be able to support, but I also, like I was a working mom, right? And so, and my kids, it was really important for me that my kids had family and that they engaged in a lot of different things. And so sometimes it was really hard to be in all the we're going to this practice and we're playing this instrument and, all of those, all of that stuff, right? And I wouldn't trade it, right? But I also know that there were times like I was a school principal and sometimes I was working 14-hour days, right? And so I don't want to miss, like I got the grandbaby who is so amazing, right? And I want to be able to enjoy that, right? I want to be able to enjoy all those moments. It goes back to that, having that village and creating that balance and, right?
And impacting that next generation because you're going to share stories with, your grandbabies.
Well, and my daughter-in-law is from Antigua, so my grandbaby has multiple heritage, which I'm so grateful for that. As an African-American person in this country, our history isn't always celebrated, recognized, right? But he has a culture that is different from that, right? And so being able to have both of those cultures, is just amazing for him. My daughter-in-law's family is very large. So lots of stories, right? Lots of legacy. And so we actually are looking at, as a family, going to the island sometime this summer, right? And so he'll have dual citizenship. So just all of that for my grandson is like such an amazing thing for him to be able to be a part of multiple things, right? And look at the world in lots of different ways, right? So I'm excited I'm happy for that. And I want to be a part of that, right? But I still, this pocket doesn't have no.
Well, you can't say no to that one. Maybe we just figure out the other things. So I have to selfishly ask this question.
Sure.
So are we still going to see you around NAWBO Indy?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good. Because I'm we need you.
Yeah, right. Okay. So my mission really isn't any different, right? As immediate past president, I don't have the same responsibilities, right? And I don't know what other things are going to come up. So I don't know. I can't say I'm going to be at everything the way I'm at everything now because I need to be there as president. But I think that's a part of leadership, right? Number one. But probably more important to me, and one of the reasons that I did president in the first place is that people who look like me need to see people who look like me.
That's good.
And I think that's important, right?
True.
It's hard to, and I don't think that is specific to African American people. Hispanic people need to see people in the room who look like them, who speak their language, who understand their culture. Like everyone should be able to see themselves in the room, right? That is really what diversity is. That really is what belonging is. That really is what inclusion is, right? Is that you're in that room, right? And you're okay in that room. You're accepted in that room. You don't have to change yourself to be in that room. And so if I go away, then I'm not really living, right? If I'm gone, right? And so being present, that's that show up piece, right? I've got to still show up. How I show up will probably not be the same, but I still need to show up.
Wow, this has been such a great conversation, and I am very excited. Well, first of all, I have to say thank you and thank God that you spoke that farewell tour into existence because it's just snowballed into something huge.
Yes,
and I feel like it's going to be like a recurring thing, moving forward for other presidents too. So thank you for starting that. That's part of your legacy. But then also just being, a part of my life and just pouring into me. And I remember when we first had that first meeting after we met, and it was supposed to be it was a 30-minute call, and you told me about so many resources available to me as a small, and I was like, did she just download the whole, And so, when you talk about ROI, when you talk about connections, when you talk about building relationships, when you talk about lift up, show up, speak up, I have lived that, in you. So I thank you so much for just being you, because it pours out, it exudes, so thank you.
So
and
kind.
For anyone that is looking to join NAWBO, or anyone that is maybe still a baby business owner, what words of encouragement or anything can you just speak into their lives to just kind of affirm them or give them more reassurance about life in general, business, and then about NAWBO?
So I'm going to go back to the build your village, right? If you're looking to start a business, look for who can help you with that.
Yeah.
Right? Who is already around you who can help you with that.
Right.
Because no matter where you are in that process, you need those kinds of supports.
Right.
You need people that you can ask questions, right? So I would say that first. In terms of joining NAWBO, as I said earlier, I think every woman business owner should be in NAWBO.
Right.
I think if we're missing one person, like, the chain is only as strong as the weakest link,
Right.
that might be a person that other people could benefit from. And so if we don't have that, there's a gap there,
Yes.
right? There are levels of membership in NAWBO, which I think is great. And the least expensive level is called Next Gen. It's $120 a year. You still get to go to all of the things. The only thing you can't do is run for an office, which if you're just getting started, you probably don't really need to be doing that anyway, right? And so I would say start there if you're in that 5 years or less range, right? If you are above 5 years and you're considering it, I encourage you to reach out. If the NAWBO directory at this point is open, you can go to the NAWBO directory. You can do a search for the business type that you're in, right, and see are there other women. You can also connect to our membership committee if you have questions. Maybe you don't see that
I'm
there.
a member of the community. I had to say that.
We have and so the membership committee helps people identify where do I fit, how do I get in,
Yes.
right? That's a resource if you don't see someone, right, or you don't feel comfortable reaching out to someone you see, connect to the membership committee. Every Monday at 12:30, we have something called the Monday Connect. It is open, right? So you can get in that and listen to other people talk there. Sometimes there's topics, and sometimes it's just people talking, which is a way to make connections, right? You have to find the way for you to make connections, right? And so using those methods to connect, I think is the best way, finding what works for you, right? In making those connections.
Yeah.
But you got to show up for it.
That's right.
Right? You've got to reach out to get it and make those connections. And I, as president, I also have a president at NAWBO Indianapolis.
Email address.
Email, right. So if you make all those efforts and nothing happens for you, reach out to me.
Right.
Because if I can connect you in some way, right, I'm happy to do that. I feel like that's not only as president of NAWBO, but
That's just
me,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so how can I help you to make connections? So
great.
that's, I guess, what I would say.
Wow. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
I was going to ask where people can find you, but president at NAWBO Indy is on.org.
Yep, that's the NAWBO.
Yeah, NAWBO.
My business email address is Jamyce at witconsultinginc.com.
Right,
And so you can always email me there. And whatever it takes, Consulting Inc. has a website. So you can go to the website. You can schedule time to talk with me. Like, me, any way I can help. I'm happy.
And I'll put all of the links in the, the description so that you can get access to her. I'll tell you, my life has been different since I have, and it's been like, 6 months or so,
It's not quite a year.
Look, I am so thankful and so grateful to God for you. And
thank you.
I think that's important to make connection. I think that's one of the biggest things that I took out. There was a lot, but there was one of the things that I just wanted to put in your heart again is that it is our job to show up.
Yep, absolutely.
It is our job to, be involved. And if you're trying to build a business, or even if it's not about business or just connecting with people, remember that you have something that somebody needs. And if you do not show up and make that known to people, if you want to, remain the best kept secret, you're not blessing the person that is waiting for you to receive from your skills and your expertise. So sometimes when it feels difficult to put yourself out there or to, connect, think of the person on the other side that is missing out because of your lack of action. And I hope that, this conversation really inspires you to just, get connected, build a village, and just keep, pushing on. Until next time, have a great day.